going on? This is a Thomas organ from way back in the day. I filmed the bit you're about to see about 2 weeks ago. And I just want to come here now and acknowledge I know the camera work is pretty bad. I was holding the camera a lot, not this one, a different camera, and it's pretty bad. And I also want to acknowledge there's a lot of background noise, and that is not because of my mic or anything I did. This thing is about 100,000 years old, and that's just how it was. So I don't want to hear it. It's not my fault. It's just how it is. How's it going? So this video is about my 1970s Thomas organ. I got this a couple of months ago actually, and I haven't obviously made any videos about it yet, but I have featured it in a couple of the RPM and I think some of the January videos as well. So you may have seen bits and pieces of it through that. I just want to make a bit of a walkthrough, some of the sounds, some of the features. So I'm going to go handheld for a little bit, and which is going to look real great. You've obviously got your key bed on the right, broken into two halves, and also your secret little foot-operated key bed down the bottom. So I'm sure you can imagine what they do. They play the notes, and it's split into 3 tiers, and you can customize separately what sounds each tier is making. So on the left area here, you have a bunch of controls for the sounds. So we'll go through a little bit later on exactly what each, like how it's broken up. You also have this section along the top of buttons and another panel down here. And all of those in conjunction control the various sounds made by the 3 different tiers. Down the bottom here, as I said, you've also got the pedals. There's also this pedal, which is basically a big volume knob. That's the main volume control for this thing. While we're down here, there are a few other bits. Basically, this is just an audio output. So yeah, down there is just audio output, toggle for the speakers, and some stuff for like tape stuff. I don't really know. That was the powering on sound. So, you know, my apologies. It's a bit intense, some of the background noise, and also just, well, actually I'll show you this now. One of the slightly more unique features of this thing is this color glow button here, which doesn't make much of an impact right away, but eventually it illuminates some stuff and you can see basically all your note names, and they're actually just glued on the bottom, and it just creates some lights. But here's the fun part. What happens when we turn that off? Okay, through the headphones it's actually not that bad. I think my audio interface has a limiter or something, but when it's just coming out of the speakers at the bottom, that thing is loud. And from what I've seen online, that's not just my unit, that's just how this thing goes. It just makes a ridiculous click when you turn that thing off. Anyway, let's go through some individual sounds. For a bit more detail about this section up here, let's just make sure we can hear it. We'll just go through the list. Now, these ones on the left are 3 different octaves of flute. So for any of the sounds, you can combine as many of them as you want. So as far as how that works electronically inside the machine, I actually don't know, but you can combine as many as you like. So we've got some flutes, then we have trombone, bassoon, and a trumpet. This one I don't really know what it is, but it's diapason. But it's actually quite a nice sound. Then we've got clarinet, oboe, and violin. The oboe is a bit interesting. And then violin. So, yeah. So, to begin with, you've got some simpler sounds. And these are all along the top row. These blue ones we're going to come back to. Down the bottom, your first 3 have neither a square nor a circle on them, and the square represents the bottom row of keys and the circle represents the top. So these have neither of those. These control the foot pedals. So I'll zoom back out. So firstly we have the bourdon, which is the 16, which is the lowest range basically of the entire instrument. you likely can't hear if you're listening on a phone or like laptop speakers. But it's pretty low. And then you have major flute and string bass. So those are your 3 options, and you can mix and match them as well, so we'll do all 3. So that behaves similarly to the others, where you can combine them in different ways, but obviously just at a lower register. Actually, I should have mentioned there's also the pedal sustain, so it basically just means it will sustain. It's pretty simple. Now, the bottom, you only actually have 5 sounds for your bottom key bed. So we've got tuba. And also I should mention, when you look at how these are laid out, and I'll use the diapason sound because that's on both. Any keys that are in line are the same note. So this one is higher because it reaches higher, but it's not actually transposed differently. So it's just that they share about 2 octaves, and then this one goes slightly lower, this one reaches slightly higher. But yeah, any keys that are in line are actually playing the exact same note, which is why these sound very similar. The only difference would be to do with the mixing and possibly different levels of circuit interruption and stuff, just from, you know, obviously the electronics inside this have been sitting around for a very long time. Then we move on to, so we'll actually demo some sounds from the bottom. Tuba, the diapason, I really am definitely not saying that correctly. French horn, melodia, and cello. So yeah, those are the sounds you have access to. Now, there are obviously quite a few extra keys or switches on the bottom, and then there's also a few extra ones on the top. We'll start with these 2 right here. These are both labeled timbre at the bottom, and they both have so this one is accomp bright and this one is solo bright. So this is where you're revealed that the top is considered the solo section, the bottom is the accompaniment section. I should zoom out a bit. So we'll put on this diapason sound. Again, my apologies. But because it's in both, and then you can hear what the brightness does. Now, the 2 tiers should be affected in the same way by the brightness. The reason they weren't is because the fader between the 2 was not at sort of unison, which I'll explain shortly, but I'll just do that again and you can hear again. Now without the volume difference, I think you can hear a lot more clearly that it is pretty much the same effects. So what exactly that is, it's hard to say. It could be a small amount of distortion. It's most likely there's a small amount of EQ, and then it just turns off the EQ. I don't know much about sort of the types of analog circuits that might be used to achieve that effect. It could just be an EQ raising the high end. I'm not really sure. My first thought would be that there's a low pass filter by default and that switches it off. Over here we have wah wah, which is labeled with a circle, so that means that even though it's on the bottom row, it should impact the top row of keys. And you can hear that it does, so for whatever reason, this one key so the wah wah seems to really turn down the volume, but not for the C here. Actually, just not for the low end of keys. I really don't know what's up with that, to be honest. But it sort of does what you think it does. Now, over here we've got, I actually don't know about these, long sustain. Okay, pretty obvious. Only applies to the top. Auto sostenuto. So it pretty much just seems like auto sostenuto is slightly shorter, but they do the same thing. So that's, yeah, similar sort of effects to this pedal sustain. Yeah, pretty much does what you think it would do. Now, a couple more things we haven't mentioned yet are in this top section and this panel down the bottom. So, we'll zoom into this panel. Now, it's a pretty bad angle. I know you can't really see much, but we've got tremulants down here. So, one is with a square, one is with a circle. These basically create some tremolo. The flute is separate with this. So, for example, you could create an interesting little sound on your top row by having a combination of some different sounds. And then also a flute. And then deciding that only the flute will be tremulated. And then if you put it on the normal solo, it does not impact the flute. So you could do it the other way around, where you only want the non-flute sounds basically to be tremulated, but your flute remains constant. So yeah, that's an interesting option that's available. Then you've got 4 sliders. So this right one is the balance between the solo and the accompaniment. So if I play a note on both, it's just a slider. Then we've got the pedal volume, which that probably hurt a little, but it's basically changing the volume of the pedals, like the pedals down the lower range, you know, the foot pedals. And then finally reverb, just introduces some reverb. Now, these blue keys I don't really understand. You have these strange presets, and then you can change the volume of that. This is called Mando, harpsichord, piano, which doesn't sound like any piano I've ever heard, and an accordion. These are only played by the top keys. There are some other blue buttons here, and this one's called piano and this one's called harpsichord. And these, so 2 of them share a name with these, and then the other 2 are guitar and banjo, which aren't here. But there's 4 on both, and it's just all really strange because I don't know what they do. If I turn on accompaniment presets, so I don't really know what's going on here. There's a drum section here with some various options, and then I turned on Fancy Foot and played a note, and now when it's playing, it plays a bass pattern for me. To be honest, this whole accompaniment section I'm pretty lost on. So if anyone knows what it does, that would help. I think that's about it that I want to say for this, to be honest. There's obviously some features remaining that I just don't really understand, and that's fine. And I will explore them a bit more. Try and do some reading online if I can, and you know, come back with some more information. You would have also noticed some dead keys and things like that, some weird audio situations. So I have some intention of trying to work on this, but it is also plugged into the wall, and I don't want to electrocute myself. So again, in time with caution, that sort of, yeah. Yeah, hard to say when or if that will happen. But it would be good, or maybe to find someone in my area who is actually qualified to do such a thing. But yeah, this video is really just show some sounds, show what it does. Let me know if you happen to know anything more about this. I'm interested in where it came from. I've done, you know, a pretty low-level job of trying to do some research, so not much at all. But I would be curious if anyone's got any knowledge of it. I do have a Discord server. There was a time a little while ago when it was pretty active, and it would be really cool to have that again. If that's your thing, I'll leave a link. There's a link in my channel bio, so look there first. But I might remember to leave one in the description of this video. Otherwise, leave a comment and I'll reply. I never say that, but also, if you like the weird shit I make about random instruments I find. Anyway, thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Bye.